resign now.
Resign?
That's right, child. When you lose the queen that way, you resign.
Hey everyone, now we're often taught when we play chess that if you just blunder your queen away, you might as well just resign the game, as quite simply you will just be so far behind in material that white should easily be able to win the game. And well, this position is no different. We see here that white gets a big advantage after the move knight to g3, just simply winning this queen on e4. But we're going to find out today how the black side, so Larry Mark Christensen, was able to fight out of this mess and in fact win this position. Let's take a look. So let's start from the beginning of this game. So I'll introduce these two players. So James L. Burden, you've probably never heard of before, and that's quite understandable. He's a strong player. I think his peak rating was 2140 FIDE, which is quite high. You may know him if you play in the North American circuits, or if you play in North America, because he's a good, strong player. But his opponent, Larry Mark Christensen, you may have heard of. He's a strong grandmaster. I believe in his prime he was probably somewhere in the top 20 in the world and a pretty decent player. So how does he end up blundering his queen in this position? Well, let's see how the game goes. The game starts with James playing the move e4 and Larry plays g6, so going for his modern defense style. So the idea of this is you want to get your bishop onto g7 and you're going to control the center from the side of the board. We call this a hyper modern strategy, as basically we're letting white take over the center. You can have it as your center, but I'm going to break it down later with my superior pieces. Okay, so let's see how that happens. So d4 is then played, bishop to g7, knight to c3, d6, and we now get to see a little bit of white's plans in this position. So by playing the bishop to e3, what white is going to do is put his queen onto d2, castle long, and then hopefully if this knight has moved somewhere, he's going to try and exchange off this dark squared bishop. Now, why would you want to exchange this dark squared bishop? What's the whole point? Well, the idea is that this bishop here is a very strong and powerful piece in that it not only influences the center, but it also acts as a key defensive piece around the black king when it decides to castle on the king side. So it's a good idea to get rid of this piece because this is black right now, black's strongest piece, with one of maybe your less strong pieces. And as I say, once you get rid of it, you can then start doing some sort of kingside attack against blacks. This is a very thematic plan in this position. So c6 is played. You might be wondering why this move is played, but basically this queen is now going to be looking to maybe come out to a5 and put pressure on white's center. Remember, hypermodern strategy, always put lots of pressure on white's center. Okay, so bishop comes to c4, knight to f6. f3 is played. The simple reason why that is, it's just a preparatory move to stop the knight from coming to g4 to harass this bishop. And now queen to d2. We now see this bishop come back here. And, I think black has done pretty well in this position. He's pretty much equalized. He's got his pawns are going to start exchanging off against black's pawns, and he's going to get a nice position. So after this move here, we now see a couple of exchanges. You might be surprised by this because it looks as though white has got a big center, but now Larry finds a really nice counter break here with e5, very instructive. It does look very unusual because it looks like you're blocking in your bishop, but this actually opens up this diagonal over here. So there's lots of different things that white needs to be careful of in this position. Here he decides to move his pawn forward, which was perhaps an inaccuracy. I would even go as far as saying it was a mistake, as this now allows this queen to come to h4. He's going to pick up this pawn no matter what white does in this position. So I will just show you very humorously, if you do g3 here, which looks okay, this actually is really, really bad, as you're going to end up losing a rook in this position. So you definitely don't want to do moves like this. So queen comes to f2. And I guess Burden thought, actually, do you know what? This is not the end of the world for my position. I'm going to drop a pawn here. But actually, I quite like white's development now. He's got lots of pieces developed. He's going to move his knight somewhere, maybe onto e2, and maybe harass the queen to get another tempi. And look at black's pieces. They're still sleeping on the back rank, most of them. So I actually don't think white's position is too bad. I would be quite happy to play it as white. Okay, a5 is now played. Well, that just is a simple threat of going to a4, trapping the bishop. So a3 is played. You might be wondering, why does white play moves like this? Well, you want to keep your bishop maybe on this diagonal because it's doing a really good job here in that it not only defends this pawn, but later in the position when things start exchanging off, he's going to put pressure on this pawn over here, which is a key defensive pawn as it's right in front of this black king. So it's good to keep this bishop on this diagonal. You don't want to be playing, I don't know, moves like really clunky looking moves like this and then this or something, because you just this bishop will be doing less on this diagonal than it is currently doing on this one. And also later on when this queen moves, then you'll be biting on what we like to call biting on granites, because black's pawn structure is very solid against this bishop diagonal, whereas on this diagonal it's doing a pretty good job. It's doing some good things here. So a3 is played, and again, you might be looking at this going as a beginner, going like, this looks horrible, but actually, do you know what? This diagonal is still really strong. It's not a problem that it's tucked right in on a2. Okay, bishop to g4. Okay, the knight comes to e2, and here we now see the critical moment of this game where the game suddenly changes entirely here. Now, I think Larry he overlooked the fact that by playing this pin, he thought that this knight could never move now, because if it moves, you then just take the rook. But what he missed after this move is that white now has a very powerful move here. He just plays the move knight to g3. Oops. Why is this an oops moment? Well, quite simply, this queen has got nowhere it can go to. It can't go anywhere along here. It can't take any of these because it's all going to be captured, and it can't go anywhere along here. So this queen is in fact trapped. So Larry realizes, oh dear, I'm going to be losing quite a lot of material here. So he decides to go desperado. He's going to at least take a bishop out in the process. And after the dust settles, his opponent, James Barden, is up 3 points in material. Again, at this sort of level, you would be thinking, oh my goodness, I should be resigning very soon. But it's Larry Mark Christensen. He's only playing a 2100, so you kind of feel like, okay, maybe I'll keep fighting on and see where I go. I've still got some little pluses in this position, namely this bishop, and maybe I can do some attack along here. Who knows? And actually, at the process, he's actually got a couple pawns which we'll see will be quite critical. But having said that, after the next few moves, I mean, I wonder, you can type in the comments below, at which point would you be wanting to maybe resign in this position? Let's see, c5 is played, and I'm not really overly sure by this move, but because I feel like this is just going to let this pawn just run down this board, but I don't know what else black can do here. The threat is quite simple. You can either push this pawn or even just capture here, and the position kind of crumbles, so that's why c5 is played. But now this just allows this knight to come in here. This bishop is now immobilized just for the time being, and this knight is on a really good square, ready to help push this pawn forward. b6 is played just to add a defender to this pawn to free up this knight. And then the rook comes to f1. It looks as though white is maybe aiming into maybe these squares later on, but f6 is now played. But you can see here now that that bishop I was telling you about being on a2, that doesn't look very active. Well, it's suddenly going to come alive in just a moment. After queen to h3, doing some stuff down this diagonal, f5 is now played, but this allows the knight to come into f6, and oh my goodness, there's all types of threats against black. So I wonder at this point, would you be thinking about resigning this game? I know I certainly would, because it just looks like black is going to crush, white is going to crush black in this position. The knight comes to f6. Okay, at least it's now defending this pawn. Seems okay, but d6 comes crashing in. And you can now start to see some problems for black. Well, this move is forced pretty much, unless black doesn't want to lose loads of material. But now the knight jumps into f7. Oh my goodness, this is looking bad, as this bishop, because it's also controlling this knight, if this king were to come back here, there's all kinds of problems, like with discovered attacks, picking up pawns, thinking about pushing this pawn forward. Again, I would just be like, no, that's it. Thank you for the game. Let's enjoy the rest of the day in this tournament. But no, Larry fights on. He now gives up this rook. Still really bad. The threat of bishop takes on g6 is just crushing here, and well, I would say try and see if you can find a move that defends it. But knight to g4 is a really good attempt here. As well, I think actually white can still take here, but the idea is that this bishop can come here, and you might be losing a bishop now. But even after this, I think there's some sneaky lines here. Let me whack on my engine just to have a look. Queen to h4 maybe. Yeah, okay, and then you're just getting this. So that is pretty scary. If this pushes forward, you edge forward. I don't know. So I think his opponent wasn't particularly interested in that particular complication. But even if you give up like a bishop like that, you've still got a winning position. So anyway, king. Let's go back to what actually happened. So in the game, this came here. The king now comes to b1. It's just a little like prevention move, just to stop this bishop from checking with a tempi to defend this position. The knight comes back to h6 now. For the time being, black has managed to hold off this attack. The bishop comes back, but now, I mean, if I was consolidating, I'm up 5 pieces. This just looks really bad for white. Okay, knight comes here. Queen moves over. The rook comes to now stop the pawn from moving forward. The pawn moves forward, and now the queen comes to g6. I'm just looking at these simple ideas to win the game. Well, the bishop comes to e5, stopping it from going there for the very least, but now it comes to e7. The bishop comes back to f6, stopping the rook from being captured. Maybe he was hoping for some sort of repetition of the position here, Larry, but now, oh my goodness, here comes the next move. You ready? So after f6, queen to e8. Oh, James is crushing it. He's playing probably the game of his life so far. Quite simply, if the rook takes, you're then just going to promote this queen. So, but Larry, he keeps fighting on. Puts his king onto g7. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to run away all the way down this way, and you're not going to be able to catch me. Okay, so queen comes to f7. Run, run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. The king runs down here. He's going to get out the way. Now this pawn h3 comes in. It's now hitting this knight, and you will be very tempted now as black to go, ooh, that looks like a nice fork, which is what Larry does. He goes for the fork, but actually this would have led to checkmate, and this would have been like an amazing, like an incredible game of a 2100 beating a grandmaster at this point if he was able to find this particular checkmate. And you'd be all talking about this particular game going, wow, what an awesome game. Like wouldn't it, just showing how how a grandmaster can make a blunder, but then this strong player is able to find this stunning continuation. Okay, so here is how the checkmate could have occurred. Well, James finds the first move correct. He takes here on f6, and well, after the rook now captures, you now have a stunning continuation. But if he, let's say, played this move, which is what James did in the game, there's no longer a checkmate. But let me just show you what he could have done here. He could have played the move rook to f4, a really good move in that it just simply threatens to move the rook to h4, and that would be it. Well, black could try and prolong it. He could put his knight onto f2, onto g2, which stops the rook from accessing the h4 square. But the problem here is now the rook takes on f5. This knight is no longer defending here, and well, you can see here all of these problems. The cover for the black king is starting to evaporate. Well, the knight could come back to e3, but it doesn't matter. Come back to f4. I'm threatening checkmate once again. The knight comes back to g2, and you can throw in this check. And well, after moves such as, let's put you put your rook onto g7. This is it. This is totally over now. Larry, just resign. You're done, mates. You're done. As well, you can see Well, yeah, this is just hopeless for black. So that would have been a great continuation, the great finish to this symphony that James was able to create in this particular game, in attacking Larry 3 different times to win. But that doesn't happen. Queen to e6 is played instead. Not a bad move, at least it's defending this bishop. Well, the rook comes over here. And well, his opponent James, he decides to maybe start hitting this knight. I think, interestingly enough, if this knight were to take, I think this is still fine for white, as quite simply he's going to start opening up. Okay, there we go. c3 can be played here, I think, is a pretty good move, isn't it? And well, this knight is ending up either getting lost or this rook will get lost. So there we go. That's the continuation I was looking at earlier. So instead, well, Larry doesn't want that. He'd calculated that out. He captures here on g2. He moves his rook over to g1, which is now going along here. And now knight to f4. Okay, for the meantime, everything is held up for black, and by moving this queen onto a light square, it does give black just a moment just to breathe just for a second, because this queen can no longer access the dark squares, which would be the only way to start attacking this black king just for the time being. So it looks as though things are starting to stabilize a bit for Larry, although albeit he's still totally behind in this position. Okay, so the queen comes to g8. So maybe thinking about coming over to here, maybe. Okay, now this pawn moves forward to e3, and once again we have a stunning checkmating solution here. He finds the first move, queen to f8, king to h5, but he doesn't find the next move, which was he plays here h4. I'll show you the forced continuation. You can do queen to g7, just simply threatening just to capture this pawn. And well, there's nothing that black can do. You can try and prolong the mate just for a moment, but it does not matter, as in the end, well, white is going to finish off, tidy this position up, and it's going to be a forcing win here in this position. So going back, what actually happened in the game? Well, he plays h4, which does look pretty good. It looks like he's maybe going to put his rook there and then swing his queen in, and going to be mating his opponent in 2 moves. But black finds this. He takes here. It's still a mistake because there's still checkmate inevitability. But he plays the wrong move here. He should have gone for, I believe, just this. And I feel like that this is just crushing. After something like this. Oh, the knight gets in just in time. Let's have a look. It's still saying mate in 6 because you can do this. I'm interested to see what happens after e2. Oh, I see. Very nice. Very nice. And actually, you can just win this way. Oh, beautiful. We'll be talking about this game for years. James will talk about this game for years, man. Okay, let's have a look. This doesn't happen in the game. The queen comes to f6. Still looks crushing. Okay, if I was a human and I saw this, I'd be like, yeah, this is winning, this is winning. But just a nick of time, king to h6. He dodges one way, the old rope and dope onto the other side, and now he's no longer getting mated. The queen still checks. Why not? Throw a bit of spite at your opponent. Throws another check in. And here in this position, and again, this is just human looking moves, because I would play stuff like this thinking, yeah, that stops all the counterplay. He takes here on e3, which it says is a mistake, but actually, to be honest with you, this would be, as I say, this looks pretty good. I've got rid of all of his threats, and I'm going to be winning this game. Well, the rook comes over to e4. Queen goes over here. Oops, he walks into this fork. Doesn't matter though, because, oh, thank goodness, I've got this little counterplay. I can get out of this position. Well, interestingly here now, his opponent, Larry, decides to exchange rooks. But there is a small problem in this position. It does look like white should be winning this position easily. But notice all of these pawns. And the king's there as well. Now, white should be able, as I say, should be able to hold this to a draw at the very least. But, or even win this game actually, to be fair. But it now starts to come a bit unstuck for white. He doesn't know what to do. And I'm assuming there was lots of time pressure in this position to allow his opponent back into this game, because it looks as though black is now getting something back here. He takes a pawn over here, but it doesn't matter. These pawns are better than your one queen. And, well, black starts to slowly come back. Queen to e3 is in fact just an equalizing move. This movement is now going to lead to a draw with best play. King comes to here. This was also a blunder. Okay, whatever. This game has been full of blunders. We've got what? How many blunders so far? There's 8 blunders that we've seen in this game. But it just shows how exhausting chess can sometimes be, particularly in complicated positions like this. Pawn to c4. I think white was maybe thinking, okay, let's get my pawn down, and maybe I can win over here. But the king comes here. c5. Now f2, and in this position white should have played the move queen to d2. At the very least it stops his pawn from moving, and then you can maybe focus on your own pawn over here. But so just to show you that, I mean, this would have been game over. You could even sacrifice the queen here, promote, and even after g2 we've actually reached a table-based position, but this is just crushing. White would win. Okay, so let's see what happens instead. I think his opponent started to panic. He threw a check in. This is in fact a blunder. So now the king moves over here, and he starts moving his other pawn. Oh my goodness. White cannot stop these pawns from going any further. Both pawns are now on the second rank. One of them is going to promote. It doesn't matter what white does in this position. He throws in another check. Doesn't matter. c7 is now played. But check. King moves. Check. He moves his other queen. Now black has got 2 queens. Well, if just to show you, if you promote one of these, you just lose this queen quite simply. So the king keeps moving forward, but it is over. Okay, what a crazy game that we just saw. And it all starts from this kind of blunder over here, where, as I say, if I was any other player, or a club player, I'd look at this and just go, no, that's it. No, I'm done playing. Thank you for the game. Just made a silly blunder. Let's just move on. But he fights on like a lion. How he was able to defend this position, I have no idea. But like even here, like I would have resigned. I would have resigned at this point. But like no. Okay, that's it. That's it now. I'm gonna be. But no, he doesn't. Keeps fighting. He moves his king over. I would have resigned at this point. But no. Black keeps fighting on. He keeps fighting on. And okay, his opponent doesn't play great moves, whatever. That's besides the point. But even here, he is able to fight on for dear life. And, as I say, this position, it's still losing at this point. But only on move 56 is it now equalizing. So, if I think 56, 40 moves later from here, you wouldn't think that this position would end up being equalized. And wow, what a finish from his opponent, and then able just to win with his 2 queens and able to win the game. I hope you enjoyed this game. Hope you didn't mind the length of it as well. But as always, thank you for watching. If you did get to the end, make sure you leave me a comment below. Make sure you message and comments to see what point would you have resigned in this position. I'd be very interested to find out. And let me know if you find any more crazy games like this one. In any case, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.